Hello everyone, welcome to our latest and final edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. I am your host, Darius Sethna. Thank you so much for taking another week, some time out of your day to listen to our latest edition of the podcast. It is a bit of a bittersweet day today. As I mentioned, the last day of the podcast, our final podcast episode. But this is only the beginning, ladies and gentlemen. As I mentioned to you last week, I will be attending Ohio University this fall to continue my pursuit in a career of journalism and sports journalism. And, we had what a run here at NordoniaHills.news that I had. I was so thankful. I am so thankful to be a part of such an amazing news organization. And we're going to get into all of that in a little bit. I'm going to have my own special thank you video later in August before I go off to college. But for right now, we're going to get into the Cleveland Sports Show and the hottest topics going on right now in Cleveland, Ohio, and all around the world. We're going to get you started with MLS updates, everything going on with the Columbus Crew, FC Cincinnati. Logan Purcell, a Nordonia freshman, he'll be a sophomore this year at Nordonia High School. He's going to be joining me to talk about the latest news in the NBA. We had some huge trade deals take place this week. We also had the NBA draft, and the Cavs made their selection. We're going to dive deep into all of that as well today. We'll also talk about the Olympics, keep you updated with what's going on in Tokyo, and then more coverage on the Cleveland Indians, as well as some preseason hype for our very own Cleveland Browns. As a couple more weeks, ladies and gentlemen, Cleveland Browns preseason will be underway. So here it is, ladies and gentlemen, our final episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. Thank you for taking some time to tune into it, and here we go, our intro. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Darius Sethna of NordoniaHills.news, and the Cleveland Sports Show starts right now. Hello, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of the Cleveland Sports Show, our final edition of the podcast. I am your host, Darius Sethna. Thank you. I would just want to start off this podcast by saying thank you for a wonderful 4 years. All of you supporters listening to me week in, week out, whether it was the podcast, broadcast episodes, my morning radio show with Ray Horner on the Cavs. Thank you so much for taking time to listen to me and help me grow as a journalist. It's been such an honor being here with the Nordonia Hills community for all my life and for the last few years of high school, being a journalist and covering all the amazing sports stories here in Northeast Ohio and all over the country. It's been a pleasure, and here we go. We're going to get started with our final sports fact of the day for you on the Cleveland Sports Show. Now, today is July 31st, 2021, and on this day, back in 2007, the Boston Celtics, this is a basketball sports fact for you today. Back on this day in 2007, the Celtics received former NBA MVP and 10-time All-Star Kevin Garnett for a 8-player trade in total. The Celtics received Garnett and traded away 7 young players to the Minnesota Timberwolves. At that time, it was then the NBA's biggest ever trade for one player, and it certainly was worth it for the Boston Celtics. They acquired their big three of Paul Pierce, Ray Allen, and now Kevin Garnett. It was the biggest turnaround in NBA history for a single season. The Boston Celtics, the year prior, had only won about 24 games, but then they won 66 games the following year with their big three of Kevin Garnett, Paul Pierce, and Ray Allen. They then defeated Kobe Bryant and the Los Angeles Lakers in the NBA Finals to capture the franchise's 17th, that's right, 17th NBA championship. That's Boston's most recent NBA Finals victory back in 2008. The Celtics would go back to the finals in 2010 with their big three of Pierce, Garnett, and Allen, but would fall to that same opponent, Kobe Bryant and the Los Angeles Lakers, in 7 games. But that is your sports fact, and what an awesome sports fact. July 31st, 2007, the Boston Celtics officially acquire Kevin Garnett from the Minnesota Timberwolves. And speaking of the Celtics, Logan and I are going to talk with each other a little bit later. Celtics made some recent trades this past week that will certainly help them improve their chances in the NBA's Eastern Conference and making the most out of their surrounding pieces with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown with that core moving forward. So Logan and I will break down all of that in a little bit. But right now, it is time to talk about soccer, the MLS, and most notably, the defending MLS Cup champion Columbus Crew, who had 2 matches this week in between our episodes here at the Cleveland Sports Show. Their first matchup was in Atlanta against Atlanta United, and the Crew got a much-needed victory. After a few ties here and there against opponents like New England, Cincinnati, and Nashville, the Columbus Crew got a much-needed victory. A 1-0 win for the Columbus Crew over Atlanta United. Jonathan Mensah in the 65th minute put the Crew up 1-0, and that would indeed be the deciding goal in this game. Although Atlanta controlled possession in this matchup, it was Columbus who got the victory. Atlanta did outshoot Columbus by 19 shots for Atlanta compared to just 10 for the Crew. 5 of those 19 shots for Atlanta on target. 3 of Columbus's 10 shots were on target. More passes completed for Atlanta due to that higher percentage of possession. However, like I said, Jonathan Mensah is the hero of the night. That Saturday, July 24th, as Columbus get the 1-0 victory over Atlanta United and a crucial 3 points for them in the standings. The Crew then had a chance to even go higher in the standings and improve their chances of getting a high seed in the Eastern Conference if they got a victory this past Friday, yesterday, against New York City FC. Now, this was another road game for the Columbus Crew, and this game was definitely over before it even started. In the 14th minute, Valentin Castellanos of New York City got them up 1-0 with a goal. Thiago Andrade then doubled the lead for New York City in the 35th minute to give New York City a 2-0 lead going into the half. And then Keaton Parks in the 51st minute added to New York's goal total with a 51st minute goal that put New York up 3-0 over Columbus. Then in the 71st minute, Santiago Rodriguez kept the party going for New York City, increasing the lead to 4-0. Pedro Santos would convert a penalty kick in added time of the match for Columbus to put them on the board in the scoring column, but at that point, it was definitely all little too late. And New York City hand Columbus a very tough, gut-wrenching loss, and this is certainly going to hurt Columbus when you look in the standings. Speaking of those MLS standings, it's not completely over for Columbus by any stretch of the imagination. The Columbus Crew right now have 6 wins, 6 draws, and 4 losses for a combined total of 24 points. So they're in a good spot right now. That's 6th place in the Eastern Conference out of 14. They do have a playoff spot right now. New England take command of the Eastern Conference. They're the first seed, followed by Orlando City, and then New York City got this much-needed victory to boost them ahead over Columbus in the standings thanks to last night's win. Additionally, FC Cincinnati only had 1 game this past week, and it was last Saturday against Nashville. This was a road game, and Cincinnati certainly showed that they were a younger team who were just unable to finish the deal on the road. The person who did finish the deal, however, for Nashville was CJ Sapong. He had an early 13th minute goal for Nashville to put them up 1-0, and then in the 35th minute, Randa Leal doubled Nashville's lead at 2-0. So going into this half, it was 2-0 Nashville already. And then in the 57th minute, Sapong struck again for another goal for Nashville, and it put them up 3-0, and that would be our final score from Nashville, 3-0 Cincinnati with another loss. And this certainly sets them back a bit in the standings. When you look at Cincinnati, only 13 points on the season thus far, 12th place out of 14 in the Eastern Conference, 3 wins, 4 draws, but 7 losses. However, Cincinnati fans, good news, you're only 9 points away from being in the playoff picture. Montreal right now is that 7th and final playoff seed. They have 22 points on the season thus far. Cincinnati, if they can get a few wins here and there, they can get at least up to 20 points and make some noise for some playoff contention. However, they do have a rough schedule up ahead. Today, they will host DC United in Cincinnati at 7:30. That's going to be a big game for them. Another big game for FC Cincinnati will be on the road in New York against the Red Bulls. Wednesday, August 4th at 8 p.m. is kickoff time. That's 8 p.m. Eastern Time. FC Cincinnati will then head back home for a matchup with Orlando City Saturday, August 7th at 7:30 p.m. And then we'll face Montreal August 18th at 7:30 in Cincinnati as well. The upcoming schedule for the Columbus Crew, after that tough loss against New York City, they're going to try to bounce back Wednesday, August 4th at 7:30 against DC United. That game will be played in Columbus. Another game in Columbus Saturday, August 7th at 7:30 as Atlanta United will be in town. Atlanta trying to get revenge on Columbus's home field after Columbus got an important road win in Atlanta just last week. The Crew will then be in Chicago on August 15th at 6 p.m. Eastern Time for a matchup with the Chicago Fire, and then will be on the road in New York to take on the Red Bulls August 18th at 8 p.m. Eastern Time. And just to remind you, those MLS standings, New England in the Eastern Conference lead the conference with 33 total points. That's 5 points ahead of Orlando City, who are in second place right now with 28 points, 8 wins, 4 draws, 4 losses for Orlando City. New York City FC in third place in the Eastern Conference with 8 wins, 2 draws, and 5 losses for 26 total points. Nashville take the 4th seed in the East with 6 wins, 8 draws, and only 1 loss for a combined total of 26 points. And Nashville are the only team in the MLS's Eastern Conference with only 1 loss. Philadelphia takes the 5th position in the East with 24 points, thanks to 6 wins, 6 draws, and 4 losses. That's the same record for 6th-seeded Columbus with 24 points as well. Montreal come in at 22 points in 7th place with 15 matches played so far, 6 wins, 4 draws, 5 losses for Montreal. When we take a look into the Western Conference, the Seattle Sounders, the runners-up last year in the MLS Cup Final, 32 points on the season thus far. That leads the Western Conference. 9 wins, 5 draws, and 2 losses for the Seattle Sounders. Sporting Kansas City comes in at 2nd place in the West. 9 wins, 3 draws, and 3 losses for them for 30 points. So they're right there. They're basically neck and neck with the Seattle Sounders for that 1st seed in the West. The LA Galaxy are in 3rd place with 16 matches played so far, 9 wins, 1 draw, and only 6 losses for the LA Galaxy for a combined total of 28 points. Colorado are in 4th place. They have 7 wins, 3 draws, and 4 losses for a combined total of 24 points. LAFC come in at 5th place, 16 matches played for LA with 6 wins, 5 draws, and 5 losses for 23 total points. Minnesota in at the 6th spot in the West, 15 matches played for Minnesota, 6 wins, 4 draws, and 5 losses for 22 points, and then 2 points behind Minnesota for that 7th seed in the West is Real Salt Lake with 14 matches played on the season thus far with 5 wins, 5 draws, 4 losses. That gets them a combined total of 20 points. And that is your soccer news this week on the Cleveland Sports Show. And now, ladies and gentlemen, Nordonia sophomore Logan Purcell is here on the podcast to join me. We're going to get you started with some NBA talk, some huge NBA trades going on this past week, Logan. Let's start with this one, a blockbuster deal in the NBA this past week. Russell Westbrook, that's right, the triple-double king, the all-time leader in triple-doubles in the history of the NBA, is now a member of the Los Angeles Lakers. That's right, the Lakers send Kyle Kuzma, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and a few other players to Washington, D.C. in exchange for Russell Westbrook. And now the Los Angeles Lakers have a solidified big three. Logan, this changes, in my eyes, the entire complexion of the Western Conference and what it's going to look like in terms of standings. Because when you look at the Western Conference now, I really wonder who's going to truly be able to stop the firepower of the Lakers. I know LeBron's getting older, but I still think he has a lot of juice left in him. Anthony Davis, if he can come back strong, that's another top 5 player. And then Russell Westbrook is probably the most athletic point guard in the NBA. So you had all of those three talents, right? And you still have some depth in Caruso and a few other players as well, some young developing talent in LA. But Logan, when you look at this deal, I don't think there's anyone in the West who can beat the Los Angeles Lakers. I certainly think the battle for LA is over now. I mean, between Lakers, Clippers, I know these last couple of years we were debating, who's the better team, with each team having 2 superstars. That discussion is now put to rest for me, Logan, because even look at the Clippers now. Kawhi Leonard is having surgery on a torn ACL, so we don't know when he's going to be back this upcoming season. So really, it's just going to be Paul George carrying the Clippers offensively. So when you look at the Western Conference, Logan, and Russell Westbrook now being a member of the Lakers, last year he averaged 22 points a game on 44% from the field, did shoot only 32% from three-point range, but again, averaging 12 rebounds and 12 assists last year with the Wizards. So, Logan, when you look at this move, what are your expectations for the Lakers in the Western Conference for this upcoming season?
Well, I do agree with you that it is going to be a better team this upcoming season with Russell Westbrook joining the Lakers, but at the same time, I don't know if I can say clear-cut, no doubt that they're going to be favorites or the number one team. There's no way they lose like the Nets were. And the only problem that I see truly derailing them is 2 things. The Suns are still going to compete. I mean, that's a really deep Suns team.
Yeah, and that depends. It also depends on where Chris Paul goes if he stays with Phoenix.
That is true, and I'm making the assumption that he does stay in Phoenix. And if he does, I still probably would take the Phoenix Suns over the Los Angeles Lakers just because of the depth factor. And the other problem that you have to look at is last year the Lakers struggled from the three-point line, even with KCP.
Right.
And now they don't have him. I don't know if you can name a shooter on that team.
Yeah, I mean...
Now, guys can get it done.
Yeah.
Anybody can get hot. But they don't really have any shooters. So the fact that, Russell Westbrook now becomes one of their, premier point guard offensive scorers with a guy that can't really shoot the ball, and it's shown in the past that he cannot shoot the ball, kind of worries me a little bit. So I do think that they are better. There's no way that you can say they're not better. I mean, you add a guy like Russell Westbrook, triple-double king, one of the most versatile point guards in the NBA. No doubt they're going to be a better team. They're going to be a handful next year, just like they were this year. But again, I don't know if I trust the Lakers, even with, and I mentioned this last week, Anthony Davis's injuries concern me a lot.
Yeah.
The guy can't stay healthy when it matters most. And that's a really, really bad thing, is when you can't keep guys on the floor. When you can't keep your stars on the floor, you've got no chance to win. So, I mean, with the Lakers, if the Lakers can keep everybody healthy, I see no reason they don't get back to the finals next year. But I think that's their biggest problem, that and the inability to shoot the ball.
So when we talk about shooting the ball, Logan, I mean, we look at the Milwaukee Bucks from the most recent NBA champions. We never described them, as this high-caliber three-point machine. I mean, yes, they hit a bunch of threes in the regular season, but when it came down to the playoffs and especially the NBA Finals, We saw them work it down low in the paint against Phoenix. So even in the modern NBA, Milwaukee proved that you don't always have to have the best shooters around you to win a championship. And I think that's the mindset the Lakers are going for. Do you think that should be their mindset? Because, I mean, look at the Bucks. Like I said, they won with not having the greatest shooters out there. And the Lakers obviously are compromised at the shooting position, but I certainly still see them having a chance to win the championship. How about you?
Well, the only argument that I would have to that is the Bucks have Chris Middleton. Chris Middleton hits shots down the line.
Yeah, but he's like their only...
Chris Middleton hits shots, and he's a shooter. You know, I mean, you can call him a scorer all you want. You can call Kevin Durant a scorer. Kevin Durant is a shooter, just like Chris Middleton is. I don't know if the Lakers have a guy like that is what I'm saying. I'm not saying that they don't, you know, and I'm not going to argue with you, the Bucks aren't a team full of shooters either.
Right.
My point was that they have guys that can consistently hit shots, not just streaky guys. Because Chris Middleton has streaky times, but at the end of the day, the dude hits shots.
Yeah.
I mean, you average over 20 points in the finals, you're a shooter. That's just how it works, especially, he got it done, he's a three-way scorer, don't get me wrong, but he's a shooter. That's what he does. So the only argument that I would have is the Bucks have a guy like Chris Middleton. LeBron isn't going to go out there and drop 10 threes.
No.
Anthony Davis can, but he hasn't shot well in the playoffs.
And he shouldn't either. He shouldn't be attempting like 12 threes a game. He needs to work more in the paint.
And that's what I'm saying. But the other, that's what I'm saying. They don't have a guy that's going to run around the three-point line. And you may not need three-point shooters per se, but you do definitely need a guy who can consistently hit shots.
Yeah.
And I don't know if they have that guy because there's going to be close games. And, if you trade 2 for 3 every possession, you're going to lose the game. And that's just how it works. Simple mathematics, you know what I mean?
Right.
And if you don't have a guy that can match shot for shot, pound for pound with these other shooters, you're just not going to be able to get it done.
Yeah, and, we'll see what happens with Russell Westbrook in a Los Angeles Lakers uniform. I'm expecting them to not only win the West, but I'm also expecting them to definitely put up a fight in the NBA Finals against. I'm taking the Nets in the Eastern Conference, but we'll see. We have a whole season ahead of us, and it's definitely going to be a fun season in LA with Russell Westbrook now as a Los Angeles Laker back in his hometown. It's definitely going to be an awesome year for Los Angeles with their 3 superstars. Let's keep talking about some trade updates that took place this week in the NBA, Logan. And we're going to go from the Lakers, and we're going to talk about the Boston Celtics, who, to me, Logan, are improving their roster. Brad Stevens is making some good moves now as the Celtics GM. This past week, the Celtics traded Tristan Thompson to the Sacramento Kings. This was a 3-team deal that also involved the Atlanta Hawks. Now, Chris Dunn and Bruno Fernando will head to the Boston Celtics. DeLon Wright is now who was a member of the Kings, will now be a member of the Atlanta Hawks. The Celtics also acquired a big-time defensive player in Josh Richardson, who last year played for the Dallas Mavericks, was a key contributor with the guards on that Dallas team. In the regular season last year, Richardson averaged about 30 minutes per game, about 12 points per game, and about 3 rebounds per game as well, around his career average. So, Logan, when we look at the Celtics team now, you have Evan Fournier, you obviously have your 2 core pieces of Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown, and like I said, those guard positions, Evan Fournier, Peyton Pritchard, now Josh Richardson, Al Horford is back in that center spot. You have some depth at that center spot as well with Robert Williams, and if Taco Fall can keep developing, we'll see what happens with him. And I think this Josh Richardson move is great for the Celtics. Plus, you add Marcus Smart. These are Josh Richardson and Marcus Smart, 2 quality defenders in this league, Logan. So I really like what the Celtics are doing here, and I believe that it's helping them. Obviously they're not going to be the favorite in the East. That's the Brooklyn Nets. But I certainly see the Celtics team making more strides in the playoffs than just a first-round exit like last year. I think this is a team who can certainly make the conference finals now if they keep a roster like this. And because I think guard-wise, they have some pieces there now. and they're getting better at that center position with Al Horford coming back. So, Logan, I want to get your thoughts on the moves that the Boston Celtics are making. Do you like these moves that the Celtics are making, and do you think that it's going to help propel them to possibly an Eastern Conference Finals berth this year?
Well, I do definitely like the moves. I think that they're going to have, if they're, I mean, like you mentioned earlier, they're kind of building a team that the Heat had when they went to the finals.
Yeah.
2020 with, just the absolute dogs. Jay Crowder, an elite defender. Jimmy Butler being the level of defender that he is. I definitely would say that I like the moves that they're making. And, since they're adding all these helpful defensive guys, I think it's going to make them a lot better. I think they're going to be able to compete with those teams, like, say, the Nets next year. Obviously, I would never pick the Celtics to beat the Nets in a 7-game series.
Yeah.
But I think it'll be a lot better of a series. Not to mention, I think, everybody's kind of forgetting that they didn't have Jaylen Brown.
Yeah, I think that series
would, surgery right before the playoffs.
Right.
So they didn't have him. So I think I would like to make that out there, that Jaylen Brown is still a member of this team. You've got that really good young core that you mentioned, Tatum, over there, who's absolutely balling out in Tokyo right now, having a great start to his international career,
Right.
Jaylen Brown, I just mentioned him. Marcus Smart, you talked about him. He's become a much better facilitator. He's better at working with the ball.
Yes.
I think this team has got a lot going for them, and they're moving in the right direction, getting a lot more versatile and athletic defenders, which is what this team needs.
And when you look at the Celtics, too, let's talk about that center position for a little bit. Al Horford's back. Grant Williams is there. If Taco Fall can develop a little bit more, I can see him having some more minutes in the league. So what are your thoughts with the Celtics at that center position? Because that's been kind of a struggle for them these last couple of years to have a solidified center. How do you feel about them now?
Well, I think the depth that they're adding, with Al Horford is going to be instrumental to the team. I think that he was a pretty solid piece back when we had him with Kyrie and all that. But his contract kind of worries me. I don't know if he's worth the money that he's getting paid. I believe it's, $27 million a year?
Something like that, if I'm not mistaken, yeah.
I know it's really high. And, don't get me wrong, I think he's going to add, more than Tristan Thompson did. But I just don't know if he's worth the money. So I think it's an interesting move. I'm not going to say I don't like it, and I can't say I do like it. I think we got to see how it plays out, and it's going to be one of those moves that is either going to kill him or it's going to help them.
Yeah, and I mean, this is going to be a great Celtics team to watch. I'm really looking forward to seeing how they compete in the Eastern Conference because, like we said, Logan, Brooklyn is still there. Milwaukee, they're the defending champs. The Philadelphia 76ers, if they keep Ben Simmons, what they do with Ben Simmons, they still have Joel Embiid, still have Tobias Harris, Seth Curry, still a member of the Philadelphia 76ers. The Miami Heat, I think, are going to come back this season with the chip on their shoulder after a rough season last year. Atlanta is a new up-and-coming team in the East. So the Celtics are definitely going to have their hands full, and I think Brad Stevens is making some great moves for this team moving forward. Logan, let's keep the discussion on the NBA and move to the NBA draft. And the Cleveland Cavaliers had the 3rd overall pick. We're going to get to them in a couple minutes here, but first let's start with the 2 previous picks. First, Cade Cunningham goes number 1 in the draft to the Detroit Pistons. It was really a no-brainer here. It's almost like the Trevor Lawrence going to Jacksonville. Basically the equivalent of that. Cade Cunningham, now a member of the Detroit Pistons. And when you look at this Pistons squad, obviously had a completely horrible season last year, Logan. But they have some pieces. Jeremy Grant had the best season of his career. You've got guys like Killian Hayes, Mason Plumlee, Hamidou Diallo, now a member of the Pistons. You have Josh Jackson, Dennis Smith Jr. So they've got some young pieces, and now you add Cade Cunningham to the mix. Logan, what are your thoughts on and expectations for Cade Cunningham now that he's in Detroit?
Well, I mean, Cade Cunningham was probably my highest touted draft prospect this season. I talked about him at Oklahoma State. I thought he was a huge piece to Oklahoma State in March Madness and the kind of advances that they made in the tourney. But I think that he's got to be a superstar. I mean, this guy was like the Andrew Luck of the NBA. He was guaranteed number 1 overall. Nobody's going above him. anybody who watched him knows he's a talent. I believe he averaged 16, 6 and 6 in, college. And, you look at those numbers, and a lot of the NBA guys are going to scoff, but, those are ridiculous numbers.
Right.
I mean, those are really, really good numbers for a guy that, he's a fantastic facilitator, and he's a big guard. I believe he's 6'6", 6'8", in between those two. He's a big guy. He's physical, and he's a huge talent, and I think the Pistons are really lucky to get him. And I think he's going to be definitely the right pick, obviously, and I think that he's going to be a huge piece to this rebuild that they're trying to put together.
What are your thoughts on what are more so your expectations? What are your expectations for Detroit this season? Do you think they're still going to be in rebuild mode and tanking, not making the playoffs, or do you think that Cade Cunningham can propel this team to a playoff push? Now that you've got Jeremy Grant still on the squad, as I mentioned, Mason Plumlee is a seasoned veteran, Josh Jackson, he has some talent. So what are your thoughts on what the Pistons can do in terms of a playoff seeding?
Well, this Detroit team was 20-52 last year, so I don't know if I would go as far to say that they're going to make a playoff push by any stretch of the imagination. I don't think, don't get me wrong, I already was hyping him up. I think he's a fantastic player, but I don't know if we're talking he's going to make like a 20-game difference.
Yeah.
I don't see that happen. Like I said earlier, I think he's going to be a huge piece, but I don't see him being a difference in 20 games. That they win 20 games that they lost last year. I just don't see that happening. I think that they're going to be a lot better. I can see them winning 30 games this year, 35. But I don't know about them winning more than like that, because that's a really big difference. And honestly, besides Cade Cunningham, they didn't make a lot of moves. So it's really the same team besides that guard.
Yeah.
And he's going to be a huge help. My expectation for him individually, I expect Rookie of the Year. I expect him to be, if you want to, I'll give you like a player comp. Now LaMelo Ball, honestly, I think that's how he's going to play. But I think he'll be a more efficient scorer.
Okay.
That's what I kind of expect from him. So I think he'll be a Ben Simmons that can shoot.
Yeah.
A Ben Simmons that can shoot. That's what I expect from him.
And hey, that's
just as physical and just as capable.
And that
off the glass.
Yeah, and that's a terrific comparison. A Ben Simmons that can shoot. That kind of shows me that he's a very complete player. And we heard some analysts, Kendrick Perkins on ESPN when he was covering the draft, said that Cade Cunningham in his mind was the most complete player heading into an NBA draft since LeBron James, and that is certainly some high praise. We'll see what the Pistons do this upcoming season. They finished last in the Eastern Conference this past season. We'll see if Cade Cunningham can propel them to improve for this upcoming season. But let's talk about the second pick, Logan. Jalen Green heading to the Houston Rockets, who had the worst record in the NBA this past season. But they do, similar to the Pistons, have some key pieces. Kevin Porter Jr., a former Cav, had some great moments with the Houston Rockets. John Wall still at the point guard spot. Christian Wood, who is going to, in my opinion, be a star in this league very soon. He can shoot. He's tall, athletic. I really like this kid's game. You've got guys like Kelly Olynyk, Eric Gordon, Jayshawn Tate. So you have pieces in Houston, and now that you add a guy like Jalen Green, I'm really interested to see how this works out in Houston. So, Logan, I'll take it over to you. What are your thoughts on what Jalen Green can do for this Rockets team, and what are your expectations for Houston for this upcoming season?
Well, I was really big on Jalen Green, not as exact 100% as a player, but as an all-around scorer.
Yeah.
I mean, this guy is a bucket. He is a huge talent coming out of the G League. He was, really one of the guys that, kicked that off. He was the first one to sign with G League Ignite, and then Jonathan Kuminga followed. But I think that Jalen Green as a scorer is a huge, huge talent. I mean, he's definitely, I would say, a better scorer than Cade Cunningham is, despite my belief that Cade Cunningham is a better all-around player. But I think Jalen Green is an absolute sniper.
Yeah.
It's a little bit of an undeveloped mid-range game and off-the-dribble shooting, but he's a huge talent. I think he's going to propel the Rockets to a better seed, I guess. But again, same thing with Cade Cunningham. I think when it comes to expectations of teams, you just can't expect these rookies to take these teams from bottom seed to playoff contenders.
Right.
I just don't see it happening. Not with this year, because the Rockets do still have Christian Wood. Jayshawn Tate underperformed last year, I thought.
Okay.
Besides that, Kevin Porter Jr. played okay, but those two are going to be fighting for minutes because they play the same way. They're both scorers, and that's all. Neither of them are fantastic defenders. Neither of them are really facilitators. Neither of them are really, pass-first guards, say the Chris Pauls of the world.
Right.
They're both, they do the same thing. They both can drop 20 on any given night, but they're just the exact same player. I think they'll be fighting for minutes. So I see this team winning 25 games next year, maybe.
Okay.
Because they didn't make many. It's the same story with the Pistons. They just didn't make many moves. So I can't just put them in a playoff spot because they got Jalen Green.
Yeah. And, we'll see how the Rockets rebuild, after losing James Harden and Russell Westbrook. This is a team, I forgot to mention Avery Bradley, a former Celtic who probably had his best years in Boston, former champion with the Los Angeles Lakers back in 2020, even though he didn't participate in the bubble, still played for them during the regular season and had some quality moments with them. So, you've got a veteran leader there. You've got Sterling Brown, who I think is a very athletic guard. DJ Augustine at the point guard as well can be a backup for John Wall. So, like we said, similar to the Pistons, Rockets have those key pieces. We'll see how it all comes together for them in this upcoming season. And now it's time, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to talk about the Cleveland Cavaliers, who had the third pick. And with that selection, they chose USC Trojan center Evan Mobley, who this past season for the Trojans, he was the only player on the team to start every single of the 33 games, and he also averaged about 16 points per game, 8 rebounds, 3 blocks, and 3 assists. So, Logan, let's look at this Cavs roster because I'm very excited about this pick. This was the guy I wanted to come to Cleveland. I just think in terms when you look at the roster, this was the perfect piece because the Cleveland Cavaliers, they have the guards. They have Sexton. They have Garland. They have Chetty Osman. You've got Isaac Okoro. What I believe that Cleveland needed was a true center because Jared Allen, let's face it, is not going to be able to do it all by himself. As great of a season he had with the Cavs, he's going to need some rest as well. And I think when you incorporate a guy like Evan Mobley into this roster, not only are you giving Jared Allen a break, but he can do other things, other than just be a rim protector and a guy solely in the paint. He's got a jumper too. He can step a few feet away from the basket and knock down shots. And when you add that with guys like, Sexton, Garland, that can help improve their shooting because they're not going to have to worry about going in the paint as much. We'll see what happens with Kevin Love and, all of the rumors surrounding him. Is he going to retire? I'm not sure. We'll see. But right now, if he does play and he's healthy, that could be a big boost for the Cavs as well. You obviously, Larry Nance Jr. Was out for the conclusion of the season last year due to wrist problems. But I think when he comes back, Logan, he's going to be a monumental factor for the Cavs, just with his presence as a leader, but also his game. He's really improved his three-point shooting, Logan, and I really think that's going to be a big improvement for this Cavs team. You've got guys coming off the bench like Lamar Stevens and Damian Dotson. Lamar Stevens, to me, had kind of a breakout year. Tough kid, is a good defender and just can give you some quality minutes. And also, Logan, the Cavs made a big trade. They traded Taurean Prince for Ricky Rubio. So now the Cavs, with Rubio on their roster, have a backup point guard, a guy who has experience in the NBA, and I think that's going to help them. It's going to help for them with this guy coming off the bench and kind of leading that charge for that bench squad. So, Logan, I'll hand it over to you again. Let's talk about Evan Mobley going to the Cleveland Cavaliers. What are your thoughts on this draft choice? Do you think, given the Cavs roster and what it currently is, that this was the right move that Kobe Altman made?
Well, I was sitting at work watching the draft when I saw the Cavs pick was up, so I had to, sit down at one of the tables and just watch the TV. And I believed when it said that the pick was in, I believe with all of my heart that they would screw it up and draft a guy like Jalen Suggs. I believe with all my heart that they would, pull a Cleveland Brown and draft, a Baker Mayfield. No, I'm just kidding, but I think it's a great pick. I think there was no other choice to be made there.
Yeah.
I think that those 3 picks were 1, 2, 3. It was locked.
Yeah.
That's what I think. There was no choice I love the pick. I'm not even going to go out there and start calling them a playoff team because I just bashed both the Rockets and the Pistons. And don't get me wrong, the Cavs aren't as bad as those two teams.
Yeah, I mean, I was gonna say, Logan, I think if you look at those three teams, the Pistons, the Rockets, the Cavs to me, they're not only the most complete team out of those three, but I think they have the best chance of getting a playoff spot.
I agree, but I still am not picking the Cleveland Cavaliers to be a top 8 team in the East Conference next year. I don't see it happening because of how deep the East is, one, and how badly everybody underperformed last year. I hate to say it, but for anybody that needs to hear it, I think it's about time we stop talking about Kevin Love as a whole, because he is about as useless on the basketball court right now as anybody.
Logan, do you remember I was telling you back in January, New Year's, I was I was giving you trade ideas for Kevin Love, to the Clippers, getting Marcus Morris. I've been saying this guy needs to be traded, not only for his sake, but for the Cavs' sake. I've been saying that since January.
And that's what I'm saying. I mean, I was saying that 4 years ago. But I'm honestly almost getting sick and tired of talking about Kevin Love because all it is drama. It reminds me of Richard Sherman back in the day, 4 or 5 years ago, when he played for the Legion of Boom or whatever,
right?
And all he did was talk.
Yeah,
that's all it feels Kevin Love is doing is talking. Can I join the Olympics? I'm in shape. He's not in shape, and he quit. It's just a joke. The guy's overpaid. He doesn't play. He's Kyrie Irving. If all Kyrie Irving did was talking, Kyrie's a baby, but still, even now, Kevin Love does not. He doesn't even play. Why do we even bother talking to him about him like he's actually on the team? Because he's not. Because
he soaks up a lot of the cap, and then without him, everyone was saying he's gonna be the leader. I'm gonna be honest, Logan. I don't see any leadership qualities that Kevin Love is showing these younger guys on this team. I just don't see it. And I watch every Cavs game. I just don't see those leadership qualities. To me, Larry Nance is the leader of this team.
Yep, and I 100% agree. So I'm not in the next, unless the Cavs do something unbelievable or Sexton starts dropping 40 a game and turns into James Harden all of a sudden, I don't see this Cavs team being a playoff. I don't see them making the playoffs in the next couple of years. I just don't. Unfortunately, I think that where we are right now is a very disorganized organization. Colin Sexton is just, everybody's throwing a fit about him. I think we're going to have to see how everything works out with the chemistry and everything, but if it continues the way that it's moving, we're going to have to move Colin Sexton because everything is just an absolute mess right now in Cleveland.
Why would we have to move Sexton, though? This is what I was wondering, Logan, and don't get me wrong, I'm not mad at you or anything like that, but I've been hearing rumors all summer of Cavs looking to trade Sexton, and it completely baffles me. I mean, to me, Colin Sexton is the face of the Cavs. It's to me, Larry Nance Jr. and Colin Sexton are the two faces of the Cleveland Cavaliers. You've got a guy in Darius Garland, so I think that backcourt, I think it can work. Yes, they're undersized, but either of those guys can play point guard, and they can shoot. They both can shoot. And Colin Sexton, let's be honest, how many games did we win? 22? I bet you we wouldn't even be able to win half of those games without Colin Sexton's efforts. And I think, yes, he, can hold on to the ball for a little bit too long in some possessions, but if he learns to pass and facilitate a little more, this guy's elite. I mean, he's a great scorer. He can do everything. He's a tough player, which is what this team needs. They need that by example. So I really don't understand, why are we talking about trading Colin Sexton, Logan, when really we should be focusing more on developing this young core and trading guys like Kevin Love and Anderson Varejao, who are just too old now.
So here's my take on it, all right? And I take it a little bit deeper just because that's kind of how I think of it in the future, right? So obviously the ultimate goal in the NBA is to do what? It's to win a championship, right? And to me, what I've heard, obviously, this is just from articles that I've read on Yahoo and ESPN and all that, all of the Cavs, or most of the teammates, believe that he is selfish and all he does is hold the ball, right? And one of the things that you can think back into history, and I'll give you a couple examples, unselfish players selfish players don't win championships, with a couple exceptions. Anybody who wants to call Michael Jordan selfish is reasonable to a degree. He wasn't a passer. He shot, but he won 6. MJ's the greatest of all time.
Yeah.
Right?
Right.
LeBron, in some cases, late game, can be selfish. He didn't win a championship without D. Wade. His first one, when he left Miami to go to play with D. Wade. Another example, more current. James Harden. Mr. ISO. He's the best ISO basketball player we might have ever seen. He's never won one. Never. He went and played with KD and Kyrie, didn't win one. And then an example of again, unless you are an unreal, all-time great elite talent, another selfish example, Kobe Bryant.
Yeah, but I mean,
he shot a lot of shots in a game. He took a lot of shots, but he won championships because he was elite. I don't think Colin Sexton is that elite. I don't think anybody is that elite right now, aside from occasionally Devin Booker, right? So to me, unless this guy is playing with another superstar, he's never going to win one with the kind of selfish play that he's playing. Because again, you want to talk about a guy who's an elite scorer. I won't even argue it. But how can you make him one of your best players if he can't score if he's not scoring over 30, he's not elite. He's not an elite scorer unless he's getting more assists, right? A guy like LeBron James, I think, is an elite scorer, right? But he's only averaging 26, 27 points a game, right? That's an elite scorer, right?
Right.
But he's also getting 8 or 9 assists a game too. Colin Sexton's not getting 4.
Wait, but we're taking this. We're comparing Colin Sexton to all these NBA greats. Colin Sexton's only played 3 years, Logan. And please don't get me wrong. I'm not discrediting any of your points. You're completely hitting it on the money with those other players. But Colin Sexton, it's not like this guy's in his prime in year 8. He's not there right now. He's entering only his 4th season. So the guy's still, what I'm saying, he can still develop. You've got a head coach in JB Bickerstaff who, to me, I think is could be great at developing this young core. And Sexton, to me, I think has a lot of room for improvement. And the great news is he's only entering his 4th season. So we can't be, comparing Colin Sexton to all of these NBA legends because he's not even in his prime yet.
Well, but the only problem that I have, right, is you can't assume that he's not in his prime, right? Everybody's prime is different. We've seen guys come in, have a great rookie year, and do nothing afterwards, right?
Okay.
So for me, I'm not going to – I completely understand what you're saying, and the only point that I was making is you are not going to be able to be selfish with the way Cavs are building their team. That was my point. With the way that they're trying to build the team, they are building a team atmosphere.
Yeah.
Colin Sexton is trying to make it a Lakers kind of atmosphere where they have a couple superstars. You can't do that, right?
Okay.
I completely understand that he may not be in his prime. And I understand. The only reason that I was comparing him is I'm comparing him to teams. And if you notice, all the teams that I mentioned are teams that have superstar types of team builds.
Right.
Right? The Nets, Kyrie, KD, Harden. The Lakers, Kobe, Shaq.
Right.
The Bulls, Jordan, Pippen. All those guys, superstar build teams. Those teams weren't super deep. Maybe the Bulls were deep. That was it. That Lakers team, I couldn't name four or five guys from that team. I couldn't. Because they weren't that deep. It was those guys. That's not the way the Cavs are building their team.
Yeah.
They want, 7 or 8 guys scoring 10-plus points a game. That's what they want. Colin Sexton cannot be taking 20 shots a game if that's the kind of atmosphere that you're trying to build.
Right.
That was the only point that I was making, and I don't know. The only thing that I guess I'm trying to get to right here is I don't know if Colin Sexton's play style is going to fit the Cavs play system. So that's the only reason that I could see them possibly trading him.
Yeah.
And on top of all the chemistry problems that they're running into with people not wanting to play with them.
And we'll see what happens, with Colin Sexton. I personally think that this guy is he's with Larry Nance Jr., he's the face of the franchise. I just think that he is too talented of a player, and I think that certainly has time to improve. I think he's a guy who's willing to listen to Bickerstaff. I've never heard rumors, of him being a coach killer or anything like that. So we'll see what happens. And Colin Sexton's already been through 4 head coaches, right? I mean, he went through Tyronn Lue, then Larry Drew, then John Beilein, and now he's already on his 4th coach. And he's only played 3 seasons. So I'm gonna give him the benefit of the doubt. I think he has some time to improve that game. And now with Evan Mobley on the squad, I'm really excited to see what this Cavs team does heading into the season. But last note on the Cavs, Logan, I want to talk about. I mentioned it a little bit beforehand. Ricky Rubio, now a member of the Cavs, he can be a great backup point guard for the team. Last year with the Minnesota Timberwolves, he averaged about 9 points per game, shot about 39% from the field, 31% from 3, and he also averaged about 6 assists per game. So, Logan, I mean, I know he's probably not going to be, 6th man of the year or anything like that, but I definitely think it's going to help bring some stability off the bench. What are your thoughts on this Ricky Rubio trade, Logan?
Well, I think Ricky Rubio is a veteran presence that's going to be a very good leader for this Cavs offense. I don't know if he's going to bring a lot of numbers. I don't know if he's going to bring a lot of help off the bench, from like I said, a numbers standpoint, but I think he's going to be a leader. I think he's going to maybe be able to transform. We were just talking about Colin Sexton. He might be one of the guys that the Cavs are trying to be like, hey, this guy's been here for a long time. He's been in the NBA a lot of years.
Right.
He's a true professional, and I think that he's going to be a really good mentor for Colin Sexton. So I think more than anything, that's kind of what the role he's going to end up playing, is more of a mentor than an actual player.
Yeah.
For this Cleveland Cavaliers offense.
Yeah, and I think it's definitely going to be a great move. I think offensively, you have some more options now with Rubio, because let's face it, Matthew Dellavedova, he's a great face for the Cavs, a great defender, but was limited on the offensive side of the ball. I think that problem goes away now with Ricky Rubio on the Cavs. So we'll see. It's going to be a great season for the Cavs, I think. See that young core develop, and only a few more months till their season begins. Let's keep moving on. We'll stay with basketball. Want to update you fans and remind you that the WNBA right now is on break. They will resume the regular season August 15th. We'll go over the standings here for you real quick. In the Eastern Conference, top 3 teams, Connecticut Sun with a 14-6 record. The Chicago Sky are 10-10 right now in second place, and then the New York Liberty are in third place at a record of 10-11 in the Eastern Conference. And in the Western Conference, the Seattle Storm have the best record in the WNBA with a record of 16 wins and 5 losses. The Las Vegas Aces come in at second place in the West with a record of 15-6, and then the Minnesota Lynx come in at third place in the West with a record of 12-7. And like I said, the games will continue. The regular season will resume August 15th with the Storm taking on the Sky, Sun taking on the Wings, Mystics going up against the Aces, the Dream will take on the Mercury, and the final game, August 15th, will be the Liberty going up against the Minnesota Lynx. And let's keep it on basketball. Again, we're going to this time head over to Japan, Logan, and talk about the 2021 Olympic Games that are taking place in Tokyo right now. If we take a look at the medal count right now in terms of overall medals, gold, silver, and bronze, China leads that count in gold medals. China with 24 gold medals in the Olympics right now. The United States only 4 gold medals behind them with a total of 20. However, the U.S. has the most number of combined medals, gold, silver, and bronze, at the Olympics with 59. And let's get into basketball at the Olympic Games, most notably for the United States, who, Logan, were off to a rocky start in their group stage match against France. They blew a pretty big lead against the French, and France comes back to defeat the United States 83-76. And I remember we were talking about this last week. If the U.S. was going to lose any game in their group, it was probably going to be against France. And that, thankfully, we were right about that, because in their next game against Iran, the United States bounced back with a huge win, a 120-66 victory over Iran. And then in their final game, Damian Lillard for the United States was fantastic against the Czech Republic, and the USA gets 2 wins out of 3 in the group stage, a 119-84 win over the Czech Republic. So after a tough, close loss in their first game, Logan, the United States men's team bounces back quite emphatically against Iran and the Czech Republic. So I'll ask you this, Logan. Did these outcomes change your perspective on how far the U.S. can go in these Olympics? Because let's face it, the Czech Republic and Iran are still developing nations in the sport of basketball. France is one of those top-tier nations, and the U.S. lost against them. So with these results, have your opinions changed on how far the U.S. can go in these Olympic Games?
For me personally, no. I still have the expectation this team needs to win the gold. I talked about it last week, and I was emphatic that this team is the best team in the world. I mean, come on. We're in the best league in the world is the NBA.
Right.
No arguments. Nobody can sit here and tell me, the league over in Europe is really good. It is. I'm not going to argue that. But it's not the NBA.
Right.
And there's a lot of NBA players around the world. I mean, this upcoming quarterfinal against Spain is going to be a big one. Ricky Rubio, Willie Hernan-Gomez. There's a lot of talent on that Spanish lineup, but I still see no reason. Jason Tatum, Kevin Durant, Damian Lillard, Drew Holiday, Devin Booker, Chris Middleton. That's just to name a few of the guys on this team.
If there is,
it was a great win, and Jason Tatum had a baller performance against Czech Republic, and then again, you already mentioned it, Iran and Czech both being, developing still in basketball, smaller countries as well as it is. I think, there's no reason the U.S. doesn't take out Spain. I think it'll be a bigger battle. But I think they finally caught a rhythm and have a little bit more confidence going into this quarterfinal.
If there is a team, again, in these Olympics who can maybe dethrone the United States, we've got teams like Italy, France, Argentina, and Australia are two quality basketball nations as well that have produced some great NBA players. What team do you believe, if any, could knock off the United States?
Well, obviously, I've already said multiple times, I think the United States are going to win gold. That's what I think.
Right.
But if there was going to have to pick a team to beat them, it would have to be the French team.
Okay.
I mean, with the stifle tower, Rudy Gobert on the inside, he's got the size to, match up against some of those bigger guys, bigger forwards, and more versatile forwards that the U.S. has, Jason Tatum, Kevin Durant, Bam Adebayo, and those kinds of guys. And then you do have the athletic finishing and ability to score the basketball of Evan Fournier as well.
Right.
And Nicholas Batum. So they've got a lot of talent on that, a lot of NBA talent especially. They've got shooters. So if anybody was going to catch some heat and find a way to beat the U.S. team, I believe it would end up being France.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. Right now, the quarterfinals are taking place. They'll be taking place this week in the Olympics. And you mentioned it, Logan. United States will take on Spain this upcoming Tuesday. The game will be live at 12:40 in the morning from Tokyo. The quarterfinals, a semifinal spot on the line. Once again, Spain, United States, this Tuesday at 12:40 a.m. And let's go over to the women's side of the tournament. And they themselves have had some success in these Olympic Games. The first game for the United States was against Nigeria, where they defeated them 81-72. Their next game, Logan, was against Japan, and they defeated Japan 86-69. Now, the next game for the United States women's team will be tomorrow. They'll be taking on France at 12:40 a.m. So, Logan, I'm going to ask you this about the women's team. When you saw these results and you saw the play, who in your eyes has been the best player on this U.S. women's roster team in these Olympic Games?
Well, two of them come to my mind, and those two names are Diana Taurasi, who I believe just became the highest scorer in women's U.S. basketball history. Is it second, maybe?
I don't have that in front of me. I'd have to check that.
But she just broke one of those records.
Yeah.
So, huge congratulations to her. And she's a huge talent, so she's obviously having a great international start into the 2020 Olympics. And the other name that came to my mind is Asia Wilson, who is just running the floor, rim running fantastically, getting inside, finishing over some of the smaller women defenders that they are playing against. Obviously, I don't think a lot of these other countries have the kind of size. I've been able to watch a couple of the games, and they're just not as big. They're not as big and they're not as strong. So I think those are the two names that really come to mind when I think of the powerhouse lineup that the U.S. women's basketball team has sent from the WNBA.
Yeah, what are your thoughts on the United States in this knockout tournament? Tomorrow they're going to be playing France, and that's certainly going to be, it's going to be a competitive matchup. You have other teams like Nigeria and Japan. Japan was giving them a run for their money in their most recent game, and then they pulled away to win the game by 17 points. So similar to the men's side, you've got some teams, and China, how popular basketball is in China. They're playing Belgium tomorrow in their quarterfinal matchup. So United States on the women's side of the tournament too are going to have some challenges. So when you look at the other teams in the tournament, who do you think can be the best challenger to this United States women's team?
Well, I think Japan is definitely one of those teams that could give the U.S. women's a run for their money. Unlike France in men's basketball, women's basketball, I just haven't seen a lot that has impressed me. However, with Japan, I've seen a lot more. I think Japan is one of those countries that is continuously growing.
Yeah.
I mean, you did see earlier on Monday, Japan did beat France.
Right.
Only by 4, but they did beat them. And tomorrow, the United States is going to have a run at France, so we'll see if the United States will hold true and give them the beatdown that I think they will. But, the score on Friday against Japan with the United States was a little bit deceiving, like you mentioned. They did give them a lot of run for their money, but the United States only outscored them by 8 points in the entire second half.
Right.
So, minus the very solid second quarter that the United States team had outscoring them 21-10, it's a really close game, and it's a battle between those two teams. So I think Japan's going to be one of those teams that really has a chance to grow and give the United States team a loss in this tournament.
Yeah, and like I said, Japan was, they were giving the United States women's team a run for their money for the majority of their game this past Friday. United States did win it 86-69. The upcoming schedule for the United States women's team in the basketball tournament tomorrow against France, that quarterfinal matchup. Winner advances to the semifinal. Loser is eliminated. That game will be tomorrow at 12:40 a.m. The other matchups in the group will be Nigeria taking on Japan. China will be going up against Belgium, and then Australia will be facing off against Puerto Rico. And that concludes our Olympic talk for this week, Logan. And let's go into some baseball now. We're going to go back into Cleveland sports here for the last segment of the show. Let's talk about the Cleveland Indians, who truly have struggled, Logan. It's really been a tough last few games for the Indians. And let's start with the Chicago White Sox, their most recent matchups, which ended up in a win for the Indians yesterday, but they struggled in their first matchup against Chicago, losing that one 6-4. When you take a look at the standings now, Logan, the Indians, with that win against Chicago last night, did put them up 51 and 50 with that record. They're 8 games behind the Chicago White Sox for that first league crown in the AL Central Division. They're 4-6 in their last 10. Chicago's only 3-7 in their last 10. And now Terry Francona has stepped down due to health issues, and DeMarlo Hale will step in as the interim manager for the remainder of the season for the Indians. So a lot going on this week with Cleveland. Logan, I want to ask you this. What were your thoughts on these most recent games against the Chicago White Sox? And, the Cleveland Indians also had some tough games against the Cardinals and the Tampa Bay Rays. And those home matchups with the Rays, the Indians only won one of them. It was Sunday, the 25th of July. They won only one of the 2 games against the Cardinals and then fell to the White Sox on Friday, beat the White Sox 12-11 yesterday. So, again, another week of inconsistency. How do you think Francona stepping down will affect the team moving forward?
Well, I'm going to start with my my analyzation of the recent games with the Indians, just because it's better to start there and then move my way down based on the question. So, I'm honestly going to answer with a question, and that's what in the world is going on in the bullpen?
I have no idea.
But they had a good run, 2 or 3 runs given up for a few weeks, and then you give up 10 to the Rays on Friday the 23rd. Give up 8 the next day. Then you give up. I know they won. I know they won yesterday.
Right.
But they gave up 11 runs I just don't understand what is going on with this team.
Yeah.
The bullpen is just killing themselves. 6 runs given up on Friday. I don't know what to say. And I don't know, and I'm going to answer, I'm going to hit 2 birds with 1 stone here. I don't know if it's because of Francona's absence that this bullpen is struggling and they're not being able to make adjustments at the right time. But they better figure it out quick because this team is not even, like, they're not migrating in the right direction.
No.
8 games behind the White Sox. And if they don't start winning games and finish this series strong today at 2, in actually 15, 20 minutes, then they are not going to be making moves. And here's the other problem that I had. The Tampa Bay Rays are a good team. I'm not going to argue that. You can't go 1-1 against a struggling team like the Cardinals.
Yeah.
You know, they're 52-52. So they're very comparable to the Indians, but the Indians are a better team, I think. They're deeper in the bullpen. Shane Bieber's obviously one of the best pitchers in the world right now. But I just don't know why this Indians team just decided to start dropping games. They were, I believe 8 or 9 games above 500 a couple weeks ago.
Right.
And now they're 8 games above 500.
Yeah.
So they're just in a downward spiral, and obviously I think Francona's absence isn't going to help that at all whatsoever. So it kind of worries me about what the Indians are going to do. But the number one fix for me right now has got to be the bullpen because they keep giving up runs at this pace, and they are not even going to have a chance to make moves in the postseason, to come postseason.
So next 5 games for the Indians, Logan, are going to be on the road. Like you said, they've got one more matchup today against the White Sox in Chicago. Then they have 4 straight games against the Toronto Blue Jays. It'll all start tomorrow, and then Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday. So, Logan, in your eyes, which Indians player needs to step up for this team, and what are your expectations for the Indians for this week?
Well, there's 2 guys that I'm going to mention because they both play, they both pitch, and it's kind of hard to narrow down to one pitcher, right? I just, bashed the bullpen, so I'm going to keep on that. But Emmanuel Clase and Tristan McKenzie are the 2 guys that need to step up for the Indians. They're both really young guys that got a chance to be good, but they need to just consistently work. And, with that game against the White Sox, I believe, Emmanuel Clase, 13 strikeouts. But it's just a mess with the Indians right now. They have so much work to do. They've got a lot of easier games coming up, I think. With the Blue Jays coming up after this series against the White Sox finishes up, it's a very beatable team.
Yeah.
It's a good team. Don't get me wrong with Vlad Guerrero, one of the guys that is in the running for the MVP, if you ask me. Detroit's a bad team. The Reds, you get a 1-game series. It's just a lot of winnable games for the Indians, and those 2 guys pitch early and often. And those are typically the 2 guys that really struggle. They've been struggling as of recent, and those are the 2 guys that need to start trending up if the Indians want to start making moves.
Yeah, the Indians are going to have to start trending up in the right direction now, ASAP. Like I said, they've got games today against the White Sox, the final of the 3 matchups. Then they have 4 straight on the road against the Toronto Blue Jays before coming back home for 3 matchups against the Detroit Tigers at Progressive Field, 1 matchup against the Reds on August 9th, and then they will have 3 more home matches at Progressive Field against the Oakland Athletics. We're going to be talking about the Browns in a second here, but for the Indians, as I mentioned in their standings, they have a record of 51-50. They're 8 games behind first place in the AL Central Division, 26-23 at home, only 25-27 on the road, and only 4-6 in their last 10 games. Indians need to pick it up, and they need to pick it up now. And Browns fans are certainly picking up their hype going from last season. What a terrific season for the Browns, Logan, last year. Let's move on to our final topic of discussion for today. And guess what? If you guessed if it was about the Cleveland Browns, then you were correct. We're going to talk about the Browns' preseason schedule here, Logan. And to me, when I look at what this team is going up against, I see 3 preseason games, all very winnable preseason games. The Browns' first preseason game will be in Jacksonville against the Jaguars Saturday, August 14th at 7 p.m. They will then be at home August 22nd for a matchup with the New York Giants. And then their final preseason match will be in Atlanta at the Mercedes-Benz Stadium against the Falcons. That'll be August 29th at 8 p.m. So, Logan, I see the Browns going up against three teams who honestly, all three of them are kind of heading towards where the Browns already are. So I see three very winnable games for this Browns team. We've been hearing a lot of rumors that Baker Mayfield and Odell Beckham Jr. have improved their chemistry. So if that is true, that's another great step that the Browns are making. So, and you've got guys, Jarvis Landry, Denzel Ward on the defensive end. The Browns, I could go on and on about the great changes they made and the improvements they made on the defense overall. But in these preseason games, Logan, what are you expecting for the Browns before their regular season begins? Because they have a tough start to their regular season. They're going up against the Chiefs, the Bears, the Vikings. You never want to mess with the Minnesota Vikings. So, what are your thoughts on the Browns' preseason, and what are you expecting from them in these three games?
Well, I'm really excited to watch these preseason games, and that's not often for me to say. I mean, I'm not a guy that's like, oh my God, I'm so excited for the NFL. Let's go watch the preseason.
Yeah.
I mean, guys don't really play, but I'm not going to lie. These are very intriguing matches. I'm excited to see Trevor Lawrence.
Yes.
I'm hoping he gets at least a quarter of play in that game. I'm really, really excited to see that. And then obviously, how can you forget about maybe the best tight end to come out of a draft the highest touted tight end to come out of a draft in a long time, and Kyle Pitts in Atlanta. That will be a very fun game to watch. I think the Browns are going to take 3 wins here. This Browns team is just deep. The only position, and I was talking to a friend about this earlier, the Browns wide receiver position is really thin right now. We cannot afford Odell Beckham Jr. to not be Odell Beckham Jr. this year. We just don't have the kind of depth that we've had in the past, and I think we're going to need it really, really highly this year. I mean, I know I'm really excited that we got Nick Chubb on that 3-year extension. Worth $36.6 million. I'm really glad about that. We need to get that done. But I think it's going to be a very, very fun preseason to watch with a lot of the rookies that they're going to get to play against. And then the Giants, obviously, Saquon Barkley coming back after an ACL tear.
Yeah.
That's always a very fun player to watch when he's healthy.
Right.
One of the most elusive backs in the NFL. So it's going to be a really fun preseason to watch. I think a lot of the NFL fans are really excited. I think for a lot of us, it has dragged on this offseason. So I'm really excited to get into preseason.
And Logan, how do you feel about you were just talking about Odell Beckham Jr. and Baker Mayfield? It was really put a lot of pressure on Baker to keep finding and targeting Odell for those passes. And we've heard that their relationship really has improved. The team chemistry is getting a lot better. How do you feel on this relationship? How critical do you think their chemistry is for the Browns to be successful this season?
I would go to the point as to say that it is the biggest two-person connection of any team in the NFL that makes the biggest difference.
Okay.
Because if you think about it, if these two guys connect the way that they can on and off the field, the Browns are Super Bowl contenders. But I would go to the point as to say as well, if they don't connect to the highest level from a personal standpoint that they possibly could, this team isn't going to go the places that they could. Because if Odell Beckham Jr. plays like Odell Beckham Jr. from New York, a guy that could put up 150 and 2 touchdowns in a minute, this Browns team isn't going to win games if they think they can.
Yeah.
Regardless of how you look at it. But if they do, sky is the limit. This team will have a chance at a Super Bowl this year if these guys connect. So I would go to the point as to saying it's the biggest connection of any two players in the NFL right now that needs to be made. It's the most deciding factor for the Browns this season is Odell Beckham Jr. and his health and ability to play with Baker Mayfield throwing the football to him.
Yeah, this is an absolutely critical connection that these two can have on the team. And like I said, this preseason schedule is going to be very exciting. Browns are going to be going up against some young, up-and-coming talents in the NFL. First off, they're going to be going up against the Jacksonville Jaguars Saturday, August 14th at 7 p.m. Then the New York Giants, August 22nd. That'll be a home game at First Energy Stadium for the Browns. It'll be at 1 p.m. Eastern Time. And then the final preseason game for the Browns will be in Atlanta against the Falcons on August 29th at 8 p.m. Well, Logan, that concludes our final episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. I cannot thank you enough for such a terrific last few months working with you. I really appreciate all of your analysis week in, week out. It was such a joy and a pleasure working with you. I had a terrific time. Have a great rest of your week, Logan, and take care.
I really appreciate you having me week in and week out, just like you said. So thank you. You as well.
It's been a pleasure, Logan. And ladies and gentlemen, that concludes our final episode of the Cleveland Sports Show. And first and foremost, I would like to thank all of you, the fans, the supporters, for listening to Logan and I week in, week out, and even before Logan came on the show, when it was, Brady Hamilton, AJ Thompson. It was such an honor working with all of them these last few years. It's been a terrific experience, an amazing experience for me. Just being a part of the Nordonia Hills community, not only in my high school years, but for all of my years here. This is a terrific and supportive community, and I am so proud to have represented you all as the sports journalist for NordoniaHills.news these last few years. So thank you very much for giving me that opportunity and supporting me throughout all these years. But that does not conclude my overall work here at NordoniaHills.news. I have one more special project that I'm going to be working on before I head off to Ohio University in the next few weeks to continue my pursuit in a career in sports journalism. So I will stay tuned for that final project, which will be coming on NordoniaHills.news. And speaking of NordoniaHills.news, if you'd like to see all of the work I've done these past few years, head on to NordoniaHills.news and go to the Contributors tab. Once you go to the Contributors tab, you can find my name. It's the first one down. It's Darius Sethna, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA. From there, you can click on my name and see all the work I have done these last few years at NordoniaHills.news. You can keep scrolling down. You'll find previous episodes to the podcast. You will also find broadcasts, the play-by-play games I did for the Nordonia boys basketball team, the varsity games. What an amazing experience that was as well these last few years. You can also find articles I've written, especially once the COVID pandemic hit. I really took an interest in improving my writing and the writing aspect of my journalism career. So make sure you take a look at those articles, the sports bios, other articles as well on the Cavs. Make sure you take a look at those. And you can also find all of my work on Twitter. My Twitter handle will be changing in the next few weeks because I will no longer be a resident of Nordonia, but that doesn't mean my name is changing. So if you're on Twitter, just type in my name. It's spelled DARAYUSSETHNA, Darius Sethna. And for these next last couple of weeks, my name will still be at Nordonia Sports on Twitter. So make sure you look at that as well. All of the episodes for the podcast and all of my work posted on Twitter as well. You can also find the Cleveland Sports Show on the Nordonia Hills News YouTube page. That's right, all of the episodes to the podcast are on YouTube, on the Nordonia Hills News YouTube page. So just head over there to get all of the episodes of the podcast. And last but certainly not least, I am very proud to tell you that the Cleveland Sports Show is on Spotify. That's right. If you're on the go, then you can take the Cleveland Sports Show with you. Just type in my name in the Spotify search bar, Darius Sethna, spelled DARAYUSSETHNA, and you will be able to see all of my episodes to the Cleveland Sports Show podcast on there as well. Like I said, I have one more special project coming to NordoniaHills.news in these next couple of weeks before I head off to Ohio University. Until then, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for tuning in to my final edition of the Cleveland Sports Show. Have a terrific week. Once again, I cannot thank you enough. A special thanks to Julie Daloizo and Maria Daloizo for all of their help in making sure that the podcast gets up on NordoniaHills.news so all of you can see it, and on the YouTube page as well for you to listen to. Until my next project, ladies and gentlemen, I will say goodbye. Have a terrific week. Go Indians, go Browns, go Cavs, go all Cleveland sports teams. Thank you so much for joining me again, ladies and gentlemen, and I will see you for my next project in a couple of weeks. Until then, take care.